The Vatican Crypt. In early 2025, during a classified restoration of one of the oldest sealed crypts beneath St. Peter's Basilica, a team of Vatican archaeologists stumbled upon something never documented, never spoken of, and never meant to be found. The crypt was hidden behind a wall of solid limestone, covered with markings in Latin that translated to, "Do not open. What sleeps here is not of God." Despite the warning, orders had come from the top. The wall was broken. Behind it, they found a chamber that had not seen light in centuries. The air was thick, metallic. The floor had bloodstains, fresh, impossible for a sealed room. In the center stood a strange, capsule-like container. It was made of a material no one could identify. Not glass, not metal, something between. Inside it were three beings. They looked humanoid but were clearly not human. Pale gray skin stretched tight over elongated bones, oversized heads, thin, bony arms crossed over their chests. Their eyes were closed, but their faces were frozen in a state of awareness, as if they weren't dead, but waiting. The Pope was called immediately. Under full security lockdown, he descended into the crypt, surrounded by 10 armed guards and 2 trusted cardinals. Cameras were confiscated. The public was told this was a routine inspection. The Pope stood silently in front of the capsule for several minutes. He whispered something under his breath in Latin. The guards reported that he looked shaken, more than they had ever seen him. One of the cardinals collapsed after looking too long into the face of the middle figure inside the pod. He had to be carried out. Then it happened. The middle being's eyes opened. No one moved. The creature didn't blink. It simply stared at the Pope, and a faint sound echoed in the room, a tone like a low-frequency vibration. Several of the guards reported feeling sick instantly, nosebleeds, headaches, disorientation. The Pope raised his hand and began to pray aloud. As he did, the pod pulsed with a dim blue light, and the blood on the floor began to evaporate. The creature inside began to twitch. Then it placed its hand on the glass, palm open. At that moment, the lights in the entire Vatican underground flickered. Surveillance systems shut down for exactly 66 seconds. When the feed returned, the Pope was on his knees, and the pod was sealed again, but now the creature's eyes were closed. Or so it seemed. The chamber was locked again, but this time not to protect it from the world, to protect the world from what was inside. The footage of this event is classified under the Vatican's highest security level, and all who witnessed it were either relocated, silenced, or disappeared. But the leak had already begun. Whispers of the event reached certain U.S. intelligence circles, and what they suspected was far worse than anyone expected, because this wasn't the first time such a pod was found. It was the third, and all of them were pointing toward one date, September 20, the Vatican cover-up. The crypt was sealed again, this time under Vatican military order. Steel walls replaced the stone. Armed guards were placed at every access point. Every person involved in the discovery was removed, reassigned, or erased. The Pope ordered silence, but it was already too late. Marco Ferri, a systems technician working in Vatican surveillance, had copied 66 seconds of blacked-out footage before the system locked down. He sent it to a secure satellite drive, then vanished without a trace. 3 days later, fragments of the footage appeared on a restricted U.S. military network. It showed one thing: the middle being inside the pod, opening its eyes and raising its hand as the Pope prayed. Along with the clip came a phrase: "They are not dead." By the time the Vatican realized what had happened, the United States was already involved. A covert American delegation landed in Rome under diplomatic cover. They were taken underground, deeper than any public level, into the church's forbidden archive, led by a man named Monsignor Adrian Valerio. His division handled only one subject: non-human encounters hidden by the church since the year 326 AD. Inside the archive were records of 3 previous pods discovered over the last 1,700 years. Each one had been sealed. Each one activated when touched by specific light and sound frequencies. All were buried under religious sites, and all had been kept hidden by force, fear, and faith. But this case was different. The creature in the Vatican reacted to the Pope in real time. Its brain lit up. Symbols appeared on the pod's surface, glowing through the glass. Those symbols were not known to any language expert, but one matched an ancient carving found in a Mayan temple. and another appeared in a coded NASA satellite image from 1987 that was classified top secret. The U.S. requested full access to the chamber. The Vatican refused. A deal was made instead. A secret task force was created between the Church and the United States. Its name Project Genesis. Its mission: monitor, decode, and prepare. Because the pod was changing. Every 3 nights at exactly 3:33 a.m., the same pulse echoed through the Vatican's underground sensors. A deep sound, not mechanical, alive. On the 3rd pulse, the creature's heart began beating. Sensors confirmed it. 3 hearts, all steady. And then the pod did something no one expected. It sent out a signal, not to anything inside the church, but to something outside. Across the world, multiple deep space listening stations picked up a frequency never recorded before. It wasn't random. It followed a time pattern. It lasted 13 seconds. The source? The Vatican. And one word was encoded in it, repeating over and over in a forgotten dialect of Aramaic: awakening. Next, Part 3, the message in the bones. Type 3 to continue. 4 days after the signal was sent, Project Genesis initiated a Level 7 emergency protocol. A small U.S. military team was granted access to the crypt for the first time. Their mission was simple: scan, document, and analyze the pod and its contents before the Vatican locked it down again. The team was led by Colonel Thomas Beck, a veteran of classified alien retrieval missions, but even he wasn't prepared for what they found. Using ground-penetrating radar, they discovered that the chamber extended deeper than previously believed. Beneath the pod was another room, smaller, older, and untouched. The Vatican had no record of it. The team drilled down. What they entered was a burial vault lined with bones, but not human bones. Some were longer than any known primate. Some had skulls that matched no species. Some were fused with metallic structures like implants. Others had symbols etched into the bone itself, symbols that matched the ones glowing on the pod upstairs. In the center of the vault was a stone altar. On that altar was a book. It wasn't paper. It wasn't leather. The cover felt like cold flesh. Inside, the pages pulsed slightly, as if breathing. Written in it were patterns. Not words, but geometric sequences. None of them random, every line connected to another, like a map. At the back of the book, one single sentence was written in Latin: "He who opens the 3rd tomb will trigger the return." Back in the main chamber, the pod had changed again. The creature's skin had begun to crack. Thin, jagged lines like dry earth. A clear liquid oozed out, evaporating before hitting the glass. The creature's mouth moved, but no sound came. Its hand remained pressed against the inner wall, fingers twitching. Then at 3:33 a.m., the walls began to vibrate. Every light in the Vatican flickered. A second signal was transmitted. This time, it wasn't just picked up by satellites, it was heard. In 4 separate locations across the world: Greenland, the Australian outback, the Gobi Desert, and the Pacific Ocean, giant underground chambers lit up for the first time in recorded history. Each site emitted the same sound, 13 seconds, same frequency, same pattern. And then they went dark again. The message was confirmed. There wasn't just one pod. There were 5. Back in the vault, the team removed one of the skeletal remains for analysis. Inside the ribcage, they found an artifact, a small black cube, humming with energy. As soon as it was lifted, all 5 heart monitors on the creature flatlined. But after exactly 10 seconds, the heartbeats returned. Faster, louder. The pod began to hum. And then a voice was heard in the chamber, spoken in perfect English, though no one had spoken a word. "The gate has opened. The watchers are coming." The soldiers froze. The Pope, watching live from the Vatican surveillance room, turned pale. He made a single call to Washington. His words were simple: "Seal it now, before the 5th one wakes." Following the second global signal, the United States initiated a black alert. Every satellite under Project Genesis was redirected to scan Earth's deepest fault lines and oldest ruins. Within 6 hours, a location was flagged in northern New Mexico, deep inside a restricted area of the Carson National Forest. The coordinates pointed to a place that had no name, no access roads, and no official record. But from the air, something unnatural could be seen. A perfect circle of scorched land, exactly 333 meters in diameter, surrounded by dense wilderness. Inside that circle was stone, old stone, the kind not native to North America. A special unit was deployed under full military secrecy. No media, no drones, no transmissions. A deep earth scanning device was used on site. What they found, buried under 200 feet of granite, shocked even the Pentagon. It was a chamber, and in that chamber was a pod, identical to the one under the Vatican. Same size, same shape, same glass, same symbols. But this one was open. Inside, it was empty. Nothing alive, nothing dead. Just dark, dried blood and strange carvings on the inside walls, scratched in with claws or teeth. The scratches translate into one phrase, repeated over and over: "I waited, you didn't come." Suddenly, every seismic sensor in the western U.S. detected a tremor. Not an earthquake, a pulse, exactly 13 seconds long, centered on the site. At the same time, in Washington, the original black cube removed from the Vatican vault began to glow. It wasn't reacting randomly, it was syncing. A team of cryptologists matched the cube's pulse with the carvings inside the New Mexico pod. It formed a countdown. Something was being timed. When matched to the global pulses, the deadline was clear: September 23rd, 2025. Back in the Vatican, the creature's condition had changed again. Its body was no longer stiff. Its fingers moved naturally. Its head shifted slightly every few hours. And most disturbingly, its face began to change. Subtle at first, then more clearly. It was becoming more human. Not exactly, but close enough to see familiar structure in the bones, the jawline, the shape of the eyes, the expression. The scientists believed it was adapting, learning, copying. Then it opened its mouth, and for the first time, sound came out. A perfect recording of the Pope's own voice. God does not sleep, but he weeps. At the same moment, a power outage hit the Vatican. Security cameras shut off. When the feed returned, something was missing. The book, the breathing book found on the altar, had vanished. No one had touched it. No one was inside the vault. Footage showed only a flicker of light near the pod. Then nothing. Within hours, strange markings began appearing on church walls across the world, inside locked cathedrals, abandoned monasteries, and ruined basilicas. Same symbols, same geometric codes, same message. And then something worse. The fifth signal was detected, this time from within the United States, not from space, from underground, below the oldest church in America. It came through a water monitoring station near the oldest standing church in the United States, the San Miguel Chapel, built in 1610 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the chapel's ancient stone well overflowed with pitch-black liquid. The water monitoring station registered no pressure spike, no earthquake, no waterline breach. Just one pulse, 13 seconds long, followed by a sudden shift in temperature. The water dropped to freezing in seconds. Local priests reported a foul smell, like burned metal and rotting earth. An emergency team arrived before dawn. When they descended into the well chamber, they found that the walls were changing. Carvings that had never been there before were now etched in perfect symmetry, spiraling downward. At the bottom of the well was a small chamber that no one knew existed. Inside it, another black cube, identical to the one found in the Vatican skeleton. But this cube was active. It pulsed red, not blue, hot to the touch. When they tried to remove it, the walls began to shake. A deep sound like breathing echoed through the entire chapel. One of the men began speaking in a language no one understood. His eyes rolled back, veins turning black. He collapsed. He died minutes later. His last words were recorded. "It is not the fifth, it is the first." The cube was left in place. Back at Project Genesis, both cubes, one blue, one red, began to pulse and sync from opposite sides of the world. Military AI confirmed a pattern emerging, not just a countdown, a map. The pulses, when plotted, drew 5 points. When connected, they formed a perfect pentagon, centered in the Atlantic Ocean on a ridge thought to be tectonically dead. Now, sensors were picking up movement beneath that ocean ridge. Something was waking up there, something big. Inside the Vatican, the creature's eyes were now open at all times. It no longer blinked. Its skin was almost completely transformed. Its body had healed. Its hands flexed. It was alive and watching. The Pope ordered the entire Vatican underground sealed. The pod was surrounded with lead, steel, and soundproofed walls. But none of it mattered, because the creature was now communicating without sound, directly, through dreams. Several guards reported identical nightmares. Visions of fire in the sky, a red ocean, giant machines breaking through the earth, and 5 beings standing around a circle of light holding something that looked like the breathing book, now missing. One guard shot himself. Another disappeared. and one was found writing the same phrase over and over on the wall of his cell. "We are not gods. We are the correction." Satellite data now confirmed that the 5 global locations, Vatican, New Mexico, Atlantic Ridge, Australia, and Mongolia, were connected by more than energy. They were ancient sites once worshipped as gateways to the sky. All 5 were active again. Something was being prepared. And in the oceans, whales and deep-sea animals had begun to vanish, as if running. But from what? Next, under the sea. In the North Atlantic, 400 miles off the Azores Islands, a classified submarine designated USS Andromeda was sent to investigate seismic pulses coming from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the exact center of the 5 signal points. The location had no history of tectonic activity, no volcanic behavior, and no military interest until now. At 3:33 a.m., the ocean floor opened. Satellite sonar confirmed a 3-mile-wide circular plate retracting into the earth like a mechanical iris. Beneath it, a massive structure buried deep in the crust, not natural, not ancient ruins. A machine, one that was still functioning. The Andromeda sent down an unmanned subdrone. As it descended, its external sensors stopped transmitting. The drone didn't crash. It was still moving, but the signal was blocked. Then it returned on its own. It surfaced with deep scratches on its titanium shell. The onboard camera had been wiped clean. The data chip had one thing left, a single image. Not a photo, a symbol burned into the storage drive. The same symbol carved inside the Vatican pod. The same symbol that appeared in Mayan ruins, Babylonian stones, and on the surface of the black cubes. The shape was simple, an eye inside a circle, pierced by a blade. Back at Project Genesis, the red and blue cubes began to vibrate. They were placed in separate bunkers, 4,000 miles apart, yet they now pulsed in perfect unison. Something had connected them. Military AI decoded the pattern. It wasn't a countdown anymore. It was a timing signal, like a sync command, telling machines across the world to align. Because this wasn't just one machine, it was a network. Back at the Vatican, seismic sensors picked up movement below the pod. A floor panel cracked. The breathing book, missing for days, reappeared in front of the chamber, placed by no one. Its cover now glowed faint red. When opened, the pages were no longer symbols, but images, schematics, blueprints, detailed instructions for building something. A large circular object full of magnetic spires, hydraulic arms, and chambers for living tissue. It was a vessel, not a ship for space, a gate for passage. Under the ocean, the mid-Atlantic machine began to activate. Panels opened like petals, revealing long mechanical arms extending outward. Each arm pointed to one of the 5 known locations. Then the water surrounding the machine turned black. Completely. The blackness wasn't natural. It absorbed light, radar, sonar, everything. The area became a blind spot in every tracking system on Earth. The Pope ordered an emergency call to every global leader with access to nuclear arms. His words were short. It's not alien, it's older, much older, and it's waking up. At the same time, a Vatican archivist discovered an untranslated scroll from the year 1212 AD, buried in the restricted records. The scroll described 5 sleeping kings beneath the earth, each bound by light, each waiting for one voice to speak the right phrase. That phrase was spoken by the Pope 3 nights ago during his prayer, awaken only in the shadow of God's silence. He hadn't known it was a trigger. Now it was too late. The final page of the scroll read, "When the sea opens and the stars go quiet, the world will remember what it tried to forget." And that's when the stars did go quiet. Every radio telescope in the world, for the first time in history, received no cosmic background noise. The universe, for 13 seconds, went completely silent. Then a new signal arrived. It was in a human voice, but not from Earth. It said only one sentence: "Prepare the vessels. They are returning." The fall of faith. 13 seconds of total cosmic silence was all it took. Across the globe, every astronomical observatory went dark. Every cosmic data stream froze. The noise of the universe, the hum that had never stopped, was gone. And then came that voice. Perfect English. No distortion, no origin. Just one message: prepare the vessels. They are returning. Within hours, global panic erupted. In Rome, thousands gathered outside the Vatican, demanding answers. The Pope did not appear. For the first time in decades, the bells of St. Peter's Basilica rang without a mass. Inside, Project Genesis teams worked non-stop. The creature inside the pod was now fully transformed. It no longer resembled the gray, thin figure discovered days ago. Its skin had adjusted, its features more human, yet clearly not. Its face now showed expressions, awareness, calculation, and something resembling emotion. It never spoke again. It didn't need to, because across the world, people had started dreaming the same dream. A tower of light rising from the sea, a circle of machines, and 5 figures standing in silence, watching a burning sky. Hospitals filled with people who woke screaming. Children speaking languages they never learned. Animals fleeing coasts. Birds flying in perfect circles, never stopping. The Vatican's breathing book now flipped its own pages. Each page revealed moving images. Not visions, memories. Cities crumbling, skies torn open, machines rising from underground temples. And at the center of it all, the 5. Each one wearing a mask. Each one holding a blade of light. Each one looking down at a kneeling figure made of stone. The book's final page showed Earth from above, blackened, fractured, and surrounded by 5 glowing rings. Then it closed itself. Meanwhile, back in New Mexico, the empty pod site began vibrating. The phrase carved inside, "I waited, you didn't come," started glowing red. A voice was heard, not from the pod, but from the surrounding forest. Recorded by hidden mics, "You broke the silence. Now the gate will speak." In Washington, military officials presented an option: initiate Protocol Lazarus, a nuclear strike designed to destroy the Atlantic machine. The Pope begged them to stop. He revealed the truth. The church had always known about the 5. They weren't invaders. They were judges, bound by ancient agreements before history. Agreements broken by humanity when they activated the crypt, when they spoke the trigger phrase, when they opened what should have stayed buried. The beings weren't coming to conquer. They were coming to assess. And if Earth failed that judgment, the machines would not invade. They would reset. The Pentagon dismissed the warning. The strike was greenlit. 3 stealth submarines moved into position above the Atlantic machine. At 3:33 a.m. they fired. 12 nuclear warheads, direct hits, impact confirmed, detonation confirmed, destruction failed. The ocean opened wider. A beam of light rose from the sea, pure white, silent, blinding. The submarines vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just silence. Then came the global blackout. Every major city lost power. Satellites dropped offline. Time skipped forward 13 seconds on all digital clocks. And when it returned, every screen across Earth, phones, TVs, billboards, displayed one image, the eye in the circle pierced by the blade. And one message: judgment begins at dawn. The United States wasn't the only nation aware of the Vatican incident. In fact, by early July 2025, 5 major intelligence agencies had flagged intercepted chatter around the world, all related to the word castrum and the date September 23rd. The Vatican wasn't cooperating. Every request for information from NATO allies had been stonewalled. Even private envoys sent by U.S. intelligence were denied access. But something unexpected happened. One of the Pope's inner circle defected. His name was Cardinal Ernesto Rinaldi, a 61-year-old Vatican insider with access to all inner sanctum files. On July 14th, he disappeared from Rome. On July 17th, he surfaced in Iceland, where he requested asylum under emergency religious protection. Before he could be moved to a secure location, he left behind a digital file on an encrypted USB stick. The contents were leaked onto the dark web within 12 hours. The leak was only 3 minutes long, but it sent shockwaves through military and scientific communities worldwide. It was a video, black and white, grainy. Timestamp, 1993. It showed another underground chamber, this time beneath the Basilica of Guadalupe in Mexico. 3 figures in clerical robes stood over a similar pod. One of the beings was fully removed from the capsule and laid on an altar. The footage had no sound, but the expressions on the men's faces said everything: panic, confusion, awe. And then the creature opened its eyes. The video cut to static. Analysts confirmed the authenticity. The video wasn't doctored. More importantly, it proved this wasn't just a Vatican secret. It was global, ancient, and still active. Within days, Cardinal Rinaldi was found dead in a Reykjavik hotel room. Cause of death, heart failure. No sign of forced entry. No struggle. But according to Icelandic investigators, the expression on his face showed fear, his mouth frozen mid-scream. Back at the Vatican, internal panic had set in. The Pope summoned an emergency conclave, not to elect a new pontiff, but to consult the Archivum Novum, a hidden library below the Vatican Library, accessible to only 3 living people at any time. Its contents are unknown to the world until now. The archivist retrieved a bound manuscript dated 1437. The title, Liber Animae Externi, the Book of the External Soul. Its first page read, open quote, 3 watchers from beyond the veil shall rise, one in the new world, one in the old, and one beneath the holy city. When they awaken, the time will be measured not in years, but in days. Close quote. There were exactly 70 days left until September 23rd. The Pope issued new instructions. Every church with a crypt older than 400 years was to be sealed, their records burned, and their clergy reassigned. The world must not know, but it was too late. The final pod wasn't in a church. It was under a mountain in Colorado, for archaeologists. It was found by accident. In the summer of 2023, deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, inside a classified facility known as Raven Rock Annex, engineers were expanding a subterranean data vault. As they drilled into a granite wall, their equipment struck something strange, a hollow cavity that shouldn't have existed. Inside was a sealed chamber, 40 feet wide, perfectly circular, lined with smooth black stone. In the center stood a pod, nearly identical to the one hidden beneath the Vatican. Only this one was open. It was empty. The room had no doors, no signs of how anyone could have entered or left. But the walls were covered in markings, not Latin, not any known earth language. And in the center of the floor was a sigil, 3 intersecting rings, glowing faintly blue. The U.S. military immediately locked down the site. Within 48 hours, a joint team of NSA cryptographers, DARPA physicists, and elite military personnel was flown in. The discovery was classified beyond top secret, presidential eyes only. But that wasn't enough, because shortly after the chamber was opened, something began to affect the personnel. At first, it was small, nightmares, insomnia, nosebleeds. Some described seeing flickers of movement in the corners of their vision, like someone was in the room with them, but only when they turned away. Then people started disappearing. 4 engineers, 2 guards, 1 scientist, gone. No bodies, no trace. One surviving guard, hospitalized for mental breakdown, kept repeating a single phrase over and over. Open quote, it's walking between the seconds. Close quote. By the time the president was briefed in early August 2025, damage control was no longer possible. The 3 pods were not isolated incidents. They were coordinated. And now, something had been activated. Satellite data from NASA picked up a low-frequency resonance emanating from 3 points on Earth, Rome, Mexico City, and Colorado, all pulsing in sync like a beacon. The signal matched no known natural phenomenon, but it was increasing in strength, and it was counting down. September 23, 2025 wasn't just a prophecy, it was a scheduled event. A reactivation. Inside the Vatican, the Pope made one final attempt to intervene. According to leaked documents, he sent a private message to an undisclosed recipient, believed to be located inside the Russian Orthodox Church. The message was simple. Open quote, it has begun. The 3rd seal is broken. Prepare. Close quote. No further details were released. But one thing is certain now. Whatever was once asleep is no longer waiting. The world didn't end on September 23, 2025, but it changed forever. At exactly 3:30 a.m. Vatican time, all clocks in the world stopped for 3 seconds. Every digital system, from satellites to smartphones, glitched. Planes froze midair. Surveillance systems blacked out. The sun, for a full minute, shone with a hue never seen before, cold, bluish, unnatural. And then it stopped, just like that. Everything returned to normal, or so it seemed. But the Vatican knew better. Beneath the basilica, the sealed chamber was found open, the pod empty. The 3 beings were gone. A message was carved into the wall where the pod once stood. Not written in Latin, not in any known language, but somehow every person who looked at it understood it. It said, "We have awakened. The watchers remember. The reckoning begins." Within hours, strange events erupted across the globe. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid began emitting low-frequency vibrations. In Japan, ancient scrolls, sealed in monasteries for centuries, unrolled by themselves, revealing new text. In Antarctica, a deep fault line split open, revealing structures buried under the ice. Impossible structures, older than human history. But the most terrifying of all was what happened at the White House. At precisely 4:04 a.m. Eastern Time, all external communication with the president ceased. When security finally breached the Oval Office, they found him standing completely still, eyes wide open, whispering in a language no one could recognize. The same symbol from the Vatican wall was burned into his desk. Back at the Vatican, the Pope disappeared without a trace. No note, no farewell, just a sealed letter addressed to all of mankind. Its contents remain unreleased. Now, intelligence agencies across the world are scrambling. Scientists are baffled. Theologians are silent. And deep beneath the earth, something ancient is stirring. Because this was never about religion, never about aliens. It was about a return. Something was here long before us, and now it's coming back.